What is a subtle sign that someone is really intelligent? When they explain something they make you feel intelligent. I like this one, they're probably pretty intelligent. Explaining something complex in simple terms. Knowledge is so vast that they can talk about in the easiest way for someone else to understand. They can ask really good questions. He worked with a lad who was very like this. He could make any conversation really intriguing and thought-provoking, often causing people to reconsider their perspective and position. He was a HR manager that could diffuse any situation, helping people mend bridges and resolving issues because he could get both parties to compromise and put aside resentment. He had IQ and EQ to go a lot further than the role he was in, but he was happy, and maybe that is another little tidbit of intelligence. How does a person learn how to ask good thought-provoking questions? By having enough knowledge and experience across different domains such that they can see similarities, differences, and spot missing information that is worth asking a question about. Getting there requires asking a ton of simple questions along the way. People who use analogies to explain concepts to others. It's a form of code switching, and integrating concepts on the fly is a clear indicator someone is both socially and conceptually intelligent. Jim, would you prefer a nature metaphor or sexual metaphor? Jim, oh, God, nature, please. When two animals are having sex, one of them, you know what, you are gonna want to hear the sexual metaphor. They spend time thinking before asking a question, or answering one, or replying to a comment, or commenting on a reply to a comment. Some of the smartest people don't comment at all. They can genuinely consider an idea which opposes their worldview without necessarily accepting it. I've got a bone or two to pick with Aristotle, but I can vibe with his misquoted, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought and not accept it." Fuck. That's the worst thing about my roommate. I try to have discussions with him and he just says things like that it never happened and refuses to think about it beyond that. Dude doesn't understand the hypothetical realm. They can switch up the way they talk to match the person they're talking to without sounding condescending. They listen to how others learn and explain it in that person's language of understanding, no joke. The smartest professor I had in engineering school was also the most humble. She was an astounding human being. By week 2, she knew everyone's names by heart in the intro engineering course. In college, with like 180 students. Later, in upper division classes, people would occasionally ask some really stupid questions. Like, it happens. You get so deep into some fluid mechanics derivation or something you forget something really basic. People would ask a question like this and everyone would be thinking like, wow, how did you even make it this far? But then, it's like she would spot the flaw in their understanding so perfectly, and then respond with such clarity and wisdom that the person asking the question would look less stupid and the whole class would be enlightened. And here's the thing. I pride myself on being really good at that exact skill. I tutored a lot of people. I was easily one of the brightest amongst my peers. But that woman was on another level. It was mind-blowing. And it wasn't just her intelligence, but her organizational skills, discipline, consistency, and yet, she was so humble. She was quiet and physically quite small, but she just exuded competence and immediately commanded every room she walked into. I've never seen anything quite like it. They aren't afraid to say they don't know the answer to a question. They know when their knowledge ends and say something to the extent of "I don't know," and anything else I say on this topic is ignorant speculation. Favorite line I got from a professor that made me genuinely realize I can have my own thought was, "That's a great question that I don't know but we need to talk about." Conveyed immediate interest, but kept her same professional knowledge base, which allowed me to explore my ideas with her. It really showed me what discourse is all about. I was in a convo with a guy who has a PhD in infectious diseases this summer and asking him about COVID etc. While all of us speculate and regurgitate crap we see online, he was so upfront about saying, "Well, I haven't seen the data on that so I can't speak on it." Or "That's not my area of study so I'm not sure." It was eye-opening. Out of all of my friends who could give a coherent and educated opinion about this, he was the first to take himself out of the convo because he knew what he didn't know. They admit to changing their mind about something. I'm not sure if this marks brilliance, but the inability to change your mind when presented with new evidence is absolutely ignorance. They effortlessly communicate complex concepts in a simple way. My father-in-law is very smart. Went to MIT and Caltech, founded and sold several businesses, published books that are still in circulation, holds several patents, and now is working in the immunotherapy space. Anyway, I'm just a typical Midwestern State College grad, and the things I've learned about cancer and the various treatments from him are amazing. These are technical, medical, biological concepts that I could learn if I read 100 books. But he can somehow explain them in such a simple and relatable terms I feel like I really understand. It's a gift of genius. They are curious about everything. To be intelligent, you need to be knowledgeable, and you can't be knowledgeable if you are never curious. You can memorize a bunch of random facts and repeat them. That's knowledge. But knowing what to do with that knowledge, how to apply it, how to make sense of it, is what I think real intelligence is. Admitting when they're wrong and being willing to learn from mistakes. I feel like this is more the wisdom stat than intelligence. They say they love learning and they learn something new every day. Then they listen more than talk. Yes, and they ask questions about new topics that come up in conversation rather than seem threatened that the conversation left their domain. And their questions are thoughtful. I had a friend in college who really embodied the idea of geek for me, and got me thinking about it more as a verb. He was fascinated by what you were fascinated by. I always admired him at parties, because in like 5 minutes of conversation, he got people talking about that thing that they just find so totally amazing. He geeked out on other people's ability to geek out. He wanted to know what you knew about that topic and why you thought it was interesting. He worked at the MIT Media Lab at the time, and was happy to share his own interests if asked, but that was never his priority in conversation. One of the most brilliant people I've ever met. I think intelligent people are more willing to calmly debate/discuss, rather than argue. Like, you explain to them why you disagree, and they listen to you and ask further questions about your viewpoint before offering a different perspective, as opposed to an unintelligent person, who would just resort to insults when other people disagree with them. You can't win an argument with an idiot. Care to argue? You won't win. Winning an argument with someone who is intelligent is difficult. Winning an argument with someone who is stupid is impossible. Intelligence has its limits. Stupidity is boundless. Humor. I think that truly funny people are often very smart and cognizant of the different ways an idea can be humorous on several levels. They also know their audience. I think the difference between, say, Jeff Foxworthy and a Dave Chappelle and a Bo Burnham is their audience and their interest. I spent some time with Buddhist monks from various Asian countries, and one notable thing they all had in common was how much they laughed and joked. Just a happy, hilarious bunch all around. One I remember, my roommate and I slept through the 6 a.m. meditation and saw the teacher at lunch. Oh sorry, he laughed and said, "You were doing the sleeping meditation?" Laugh out loud. They draw wisdom from multiple sources. Wait, but that might be more wise than intelligent. But I guess those two tend to be seen together a lot. It is important to draw wisdom from many different places. If we take it from only one place, it becomes rigid and stale. Iro. Talking to people as if they're intelligent at their level and without being condescending or even letting on that it's lower than their level. I used to work with a doctor, Tom Howard, and the day I realized he was a genius was the time he guessed every single condition a patient of mine had based on minute pieces of information about him. They apply knowledge from one realm into a new and relevant situation. For instance, one person described a situation, might have been on Reddit, where they were a new assistant in an academic research lab and fixed a snag that stumped all the senior researchers, including the professor. The team was trying to video record their project using a strobe light, and their footage wasn't working as planned. When no one else made progress at diagnosing or solving the problem, the most junior individual spoke up and suggested that the strobe could be out of phase. They remembered that video typically records at a rate of 24 frames a minute second, thanks for the correction, and explained that along with suggesting a change to the strobe's flash rate so it would coincide with the recording. This worked. And it really raised up that individual's reputation within the group. Inwardly they were almost embarrassed about the source of this knowledge. They had a gaming hobby back in high school, and had taken some video footage of that, and discovered the standard frame rate while playing around in editing software. But they remembered that detail years later and realized it made a difference in a completely different context. That is intelligence. They're logical, and they find out more information rather than believing something right away. This is something that has become increasingly important in today's fake news society, where we don't fact check enough. Do your research, folks. They don't open up threads like these hoping to find comments that fit how they see themselves. Yeah, I see you looking through these comments, but I don't like to brag and still crave some validation. Fuck, you got me.